said he could only hear music.
Perfect. I can hear.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
Great.
we need to turn off the music somehow. I muted my music, but I don't know how. Is there a way to turn off this music?
I think there's a wait music that Discord plays. I'm not so sure if it is for everyone. Okay. Nadeem
Yeah,
has also
I mean, if you mute it on the bottom, you won't hear it. But I just wonder if you don't mute it.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're in the world. Welcome to the fourth office hour session for the NVIDIA LlamaIndex Developer Contest. I am Jay, and I'll be the host for today's session, and we'll be focusing on the technical Q&A to support your projects as you develop them. We are almost in the middle of this developer contest. There's almost 1 more month and a couple of more days for the last day to submit your projects. So I think it's a good time to check in and then answer your queries if you are running into any technical issues. And today we are joined by two technical experts from NVIDIA, and I'll introduce themselves. So Alex, can you introduce yourself and let us know what you do at NVIDIA?
Sure. Hey, my name's Alex Steiner. I've been at NVIDIA about 6 months. Prior to that, I've been a data scientist for 15, 20 years. At NVIDIA, I'm a solutions architect. So I help clients, a lot of startups, and then enterprises kind of use our software. And then answer, technical questions, help them along to be basically successful with NVIDIA products.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for sharing that, and it's really good to have you back again. So welcome. And today we have another guest as well, Kavya. Kavya, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi all, I'm Kavya. I'm also another solutions architect at NVIDIA. So I work on Gen AI workloads with many of the customers, helping them with the technical queries and setting up POCs for their AI workloads and helping them with the NVIDIA software stack. So hope we have a great session. Nice meeting you all.
Okay, great. Great to have you here, Kavya. So, okay, let's get started. So before we start answering the Q&A session, just a quick reminder that this developer contest is for building innovative large language model application, and you need to use at least one of the NVIDIA and LlamaIndex technology in your project. There's tons of information given on the product page, and the last date for your project submission is November 10th. And in which you have to post a social post that could be on X or LinkedIn or any other mentioned social platform. And then there's also, you need to submit a form as well, where you have to give all the information about how to run the project, as well as any API keys that are required to run your project. So please go through the requirements before you submit the application, because not following any one of the requirements might disqualify you from the contest. So please make sure that you satisfy all the requirements. With that, I would like to open the floor for the technical question. You can send them in the chat of this session. So I see a bunch of people are having issues. It shouldn't be happening, but this session is being recorded. So if in case you're not able to hear or just not able to follow along, the recording will be available. So the first question to start is, I was running a chatbot and the chatbot will show error messages after 1 to 2 questions. What could be the reason? I think this is unclear.
It could be,
Alex.
Are you mapping? I mean, it could be that you're mapping the history of the chat and then you're running out of context length. So it could be that you're running a chat that tracks the history. And so when you run that, basically each prompt that's going to send in the previous, chat history. So that is a potential issue, but it's a really undescript error. So I'm just guessing here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Okay,
have any
so
other, if you have any other follow-ups, kind of like to give, like
yeah,
about what error, what's the error message, and then that would help.
yeah. So what kind of error messages do you get, like if you run out of the contest length?
Well, usually, I mean, it would tell you like usually it would say like the context length is too long. Like it'll give you like your prompt is this many tokens, and the context can only handle like 8,000.
I see.
Like
I see. I see.
The bot showed errors without more details. I mean, it's very difficult to do that. If you get some details, like send them into the chat later with the logs, and then we can probably help a little bit more. But it's very difficult to help with that.
Probably to debug the issue, try with the smaller prompts. See if your chatbot or the model is working with your current model with the shorter context length. Then increase your prompts with the higher context, and then try it out. So if that is causing the error, no response error, it could be the context length of your prompt. Then you might have to use bigger models for your chatbot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you have like error messages that you can share, but I think we have to move on to the next question. So that one, like we usually have to have some to debug code. You have to have some kind of error to know what it is.
Yeah, and one more follow-up question I had regarding this problem. So, is there a sliding window that is applied to these kind of problems, like where just the contest length is just
you can do
the
that. So usually you can say how many messages you want to send in if it is that. But if you have it set at 10 and then the context length is short, then it wouldn't work. So I think but I think you would have you'd have some kind of description error, not just error, not just error.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I've seen in the past is like if you are building a GUI-based application using Streamlit or what's the other one? Gradio. So if you don't see any error, Gradio, right? If you don't see any errors on the application side, like you can see the logs on the terminal where you ran the application. So if you're just running those applications on Streamlit, you can just follow along what's the log saying in the terminal where you're running the application. Okay, I see a bunch of people typing. So there was one question before the session started, which is when integrating NVIDIA and NIM microservices, what are the potential bottlenecks and how can I optimize latency and response time in large scale RAG deployments?
So one is the model that you're using. If it is the higher parameters, so if you're using a 7 dB model, it's going to take longer to answer the question than a 30 dB model. So like the model size. So usually you want to use the smallest model you can to complete your task if you're doing something in a very efficient wise way. Another issue is context length. So the more you send the more documents you send in to the RAG, the longer it's going to process because it's an autoaggressive process. So the more tokens you generate, the longer it's going to take. So the more tokens it has to read, the more tokens it has to write, it's going to take longer. Some of the issues like that, and then basically which model you use. Some models are just faster than other models. So I'd say test the model, test the context length. If you can, use a re-ranker. So sometimes when you do RAG, you can actually, you send in, you get 10 documents out of the vector database. You might want to re-rank them, and then maybe you even throw the 5 least ranked documents out, and so that way you're only sending in now 5 documents to the LLM versus 10, and you're getting basically the same result because you're throwing away the least relevant documents. So that's a methodology right there. Those are three or four. Like, it's just watch the context length, lower parameter model. Obviously, if you are doing something in open source and you are deploying a model, use a faster inference framework like TensorRT LLM. And I would say but most likely you're using the the NIM endpoints. So I'd say a lower parameter model and pick the model.
Okay.
There is one question on the chat regarding the Llama model and the memory issue. So I think probably you would need more memory for this model. You might be the reason why it would be taking for longer time inference would be the model requires more memory and for running the inference. So that's why it probably might stop with the OOM error, out of memory issue. So that's the reason you would be getting this error.
Kavya, are you referring to the question from Yuan?
Yes.
Google Colab.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we don't really we don't really support Ollama because Ollama is not like an NVIDIA product. So we wouldn't answer a question on there. But yeah, generally you do need enough VRAM. So a T4, I guess is it 32 gigabytes in a T4? So you would need a smaller model. And you would need T4 has 3015. Sorry. So then you would need something that would fit below a 15 gigabyte model. I don't know what you can run on the a T1 T4 GPU. Probably some. You run a GGUF quantized model, I'm sure. But I think you would just have to pick the model, like quantization, that would fit on 15 gigabytes, basically.
Right, agree. Yeah, I think the question was that how can I read in documentation that one needs 32 gigs of RAM using Ollama and Colab has just 15. So would that imply performance issues when running my script? So in that case, as you said, Alex and Kavya, they can choose.
Okay, so there's a little bit of confusion. So 32 gigabytes of RAM. I don't know if the T4 might have 15 gigabytes of VRAM, and that's GPU memory. And so RAM and VRAM are not the same. So RAM is the compute random access memory, and then VRAM is the GPU's memory. And so Ollama might just need 32 gigabytes of RAM, which I bet the T4 machine might have. It probably does not only have 15 gigabytes of RAM, because I don't know any computers that only have 15 gigabytes of RAM that are built in 2024.
Yeah. Even with 15 gigs of T4 GPU, I think there are a bunch of small language models like the one that was released yesterday, like the Llama 3.2. There was 1B model, there's 3B model. So I think there are enough small language model which can fit onto that GPU with the quantization or the GGUF quantized model that support Ollama. So yeah, that should be fine.
Where can I find a previous recording of the office hours? Did we send it out? I don't know.
Yeah, I think we post all the recordings after the session ends. So maybe we can find a place later. We'll send all the recordings of the previous office hours after this session. So the next question is, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but normalizing flow-based generative models are more popular in audio domain than image domain. Why normalizing flows are ignored in image domain? I think they are reducing the black boxness of an AI model. I've just started to study Gen AI. Any insight, Alex or Kavya?
No, I think your brief studies are further than I've gotten in image audio. I'm not an image or audio person. I've done the LLMs a lot, but I need to get into the. I haven't really got into the image or audio much. Yeah.
What do you mean by normalizing the flow? Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think the user developed the right. Yeah, if you can explore or just share more about what you mean
Are
by
you making all the
normalizing.
weights between 0 and 1? Would that be?
Yeah. Okay, so there's a new question. Is it possible to query off a large document? Since it's a large document, I would want to preload into the vector database. I'm worried about response time through, though, would using a smaller model help get a faster response time as well, or should you just limit the size of document you're using?
I would just I mean, when you're using a large document, say you're using a PDF, you can choose, do I want to chunk this by page, or you can choose, do I want to chunk this by the amount of tokens. So if you're worried about your documents being large, I would say use a different chunking strategy. So basically extract the text from your document and then chunk it into pieces of, 500 tokens or 1,000 tokens, something like that, or even smaller, and then feed, vector as that and feed it into the vector database. So that way, when you're retrieving your chunks of documents, when you ask a question on RAG, the documents are generally smaller. And so obviously, like, based on the question and the question and answer types, you should tune the chunks a little bit, because if you're asking a very detailed question and your chunks are very small, you're not going to get very good answers. But if you kind of like can tune the chunks so they're approximately the size of the answers that you want, like the smallest basically to answer the questions, that would be the most optimal way to speed up your inference, because then you're only sending in the appropriate amount of tokens.
Yes. Again, it's a trade-off between your accuracy and and your use case. So if you're creating smaller number of chunks and using a smaller model and providing those chunks as context, probably you will miss out the answers. The accuracy might be dropped a bit, but then you can experiment and see based on your chunk size.
Okay, great. So the next question is, I explored some NIMs and noticed that requires API key. With the personal email, we have 1,000 credits for the API. Could you please explain how does this work? Credit are consumed once or every time we use the API? How do we earn credits? Kavya or Alex, do you want to take that?
So one API call equals 1 credit. So if you have 1,000 API calls credits, you get to call the API 1,000 times. Sometimes that's like for some models that could be generating an image, but for some models that could just be generating an embedding of a text. So those models, like, are less good to use for your credits. Those embedding text, because you'd rather generate an image. It's using a lot more compute power. Kind of how it works is we just have a lot of GPUs in the cloud that kind of like we use build.nvidia.com mainly for a site where clients can come and test the new different models. We don't have any service that we charge customers for like this. Like, we don't charge for this site, or we don't charge per tokens like some, like Google Vertex or Amazon Bedrock might charge. And so how do you earn more credits? Basically, I think there's a way that we have to get credits. What is the best way to get additional credits, Jay? I mean, would it be to email the alias, or would it be to message one of. I don't think we want to. I don't think we want to do DMs because this happened last time in the LangChain contest, and basically like we didn't see a lot of the DMs, and so a lot of them went unmet. So I think I know for the next contest we're working on a Google form. What would be the best way for this contest? I think we'll have to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To answer that question, so I think the primary way is to just use the 1,000 credits carefully. But if they are running into issues where they are running out of credits, then the other option could be downloadable nymphs, where basically a participant can download the Docker container which has the optimized model. So it's running on the participants or developers laptop or GPU, which has a NVIDIA GPU. So that gives you unlimited credits. And if you have a small GPU memory, then you can try using small language model. And if that isn't the case, then if you are requiring additional credits, then you can maybe request NVIDIA to get more credits for this developer contest. And soon we'll have that email ID where you can send in your request to get more credits, and we'll get back to you on this, like post this.
Brian on the chat said he's found a workaround. We don't promote this, but for since everyone's here, the chat says he's been able to just create new accounts with aliases, email plus alias at email.com. So you can try that as well, or you can sign up. Also, you can sign up. You can sign up for an enterprise account, maybe with your personal one, and you get 5,000 credits. Like that's not really recommended either, but it's not. It will work.
Yeah. Basically, we don't know what Brian suggested, but feel free to use that. Yeah. So the another question is, hi, I would like to ask how many NVIDIA credits will it cost if I want to fine-tune a Llama 3.1 8-bit model on 4,000 A400 page text? Kavya, do you want to answer that?
I'm not exactly sure. Alex, are you aware of how many credits would be required?
Well, I mean, we don't have any fine-tuning service on like build.nvidia.com, so it's not really available. So we don't have like compute
number
fine-tuning. You'd have to bring if you want to do a fine-tuning job, you'd have to bring your own compute, basically.
GPU. Yeah. Good option there would be.
Fine-tuning takes kind of like unfortunately, a lot more memory than inference. So it's a lot more compute intensive. Just to let you know, the fine-tuning is.
I see. So, can we fine-tune small language models like 3B, Llama 3.2 on Google?
I think you can use like one GPU. If anything's like less than 3B parameters, like one GPU will usually suffice. I mean, depending on which GPU it is, obviously. But so those smaller models like 1B or something like that, that's what I'd recommend if you were going to fine-tune to do. But I wouldn't but there's no current way on build.nvidia.com that we have provided.
Okay, cool. The next question is, I'm trying to generate a Q&A dataset based on structured dataset using ChatGPT. I want to fine-tune a model on the Q&A dataset, and the performance was not good. Why do you think the performance wasn't good? Dataset was 5,000 lines. What is a good size for a dataset to fine-tune the model?
I mean, that should be pretty good, like 5,000 lines. Like you can usually start out with just like 100 examples to fine tune. Now I don't know why your model.
Are you evaluating on the same data set? So probably start with a smaller size. So instead of using 500 lines, use 1,000 or 5. Instead of using 5,000, use 500 and see what is the performance that you're getting on the same data set. So then based on that, try to increase. So try to play around with the model parameters and see what else can be improved. So if you're using a bigger model and fine tuning with a very small amount of data set, probably the reason why you would be getting the bad results. So you can try experimenting that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So the next question is if the developer has Apple MacBook Air with M2 16 gig RAM, VRAM, GPU, can I use this to fine tune a 3B model?
You'd have to look at the MLX framework. Probably like Apple has a framework called MLX. You can I don't know if they can fine tune on there yet. But that's not. I mean, obviously that would be not NVIDIA related at all because there's no NVIDIA GPU in the Mac M2.
Mm-hmm.
So we wouldn't really be equipped to answer that question, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. There's one other question. Instead of building handful of documents in a folder to build and query RAG, could we just pull directly from a broad database using API? Can you please point us to resources or notebook if this approachable is available?
Yeah, I mean, if you can pull those documents from the database, basically all you're doing then is pulling the documents from a database to your local machine vector or to somewhere vectorizing them with the embedding model. And so basically you just need some central location where it's going to pull pull the document from that database to somewhere, and then somewhere it's going to be embedded. So maybe that's your local machine. So if you're pulling the documents to your local machine, calling the API to embed the documents and then feeding them into a vector database after. Unless that place, maybe if they're already in some database, you can create a new column in that database with the vectorized representation of the document. If you already have the documents in there, and then use that. That's all the vector database is just it has an index column of the embedding thing, and then it has a way to do vector search. And so you could do that. It's just that you just have to pipe it together. There's no it's not like a very difficult task. You could probably have ChatGPT help you with that, I'm sure.
Okay, that makes sense. Any more questions? I had one follow-up question. So, Alex, in the beginning of this hours, you mentioned about using re-ranker in the RAG pipeline. So, how does that differ? So, I think in LlamaIndex, there's when you create the vector database or when you query the vector database, it has a parameter called similarity search, I guess, and you can maybe give in like 10 or 20 as in parameter. So how is that different from re-ranker?
So kind of so basically there'll be different kinds of retrievers in LlamaIndex.
Okay.
So when you basically you'll vectorize everything and feed it into a vector database. So all your chunks that you're going to retrieve have been vectorized, and you're going to look for the most similar. So basically when you send in a question, you ask a question, it's going to go through the embedding model to vectorize that to create a vector out of your question. And then it's going to do a cosine, basically a cosine similarity between your vector and all the other vectors in the database, and then pull out those the vectors that are the chunks that are closest. So say basically you get 10 documents out of the vector database. So we ask a question, we get the 10 most relevant documents out of our vector database. But who says those are very relevant? We said those because the embedding model, but the embedding model, how smart is the embedding model? We don't know. And so what a re-ranker will do is it will look at those 10, it'll look at the question, and those 10 chunks that we got out of the vector database, and then it'll say how relevant is each of these chunks to this question actually. And so that'll be kind of like go through, and it's like an LLM that's been trained basically to say, look at the question and look at these documents, how relevant are there? And then we'll attach a probability to each of those documents. And so it'll say, this document is actually like 0.9 related. This is 0.4 related. And so basically it will rank all those. Well, first you got a ranking from the vector database and said these are all the top 10 documents by the embedding model. Now you're going to get new probabilities out of the re-ranker, and so now you're going to get new 10 probabilities and a new 10 order of those 10 documents, and the lowest the bottom documents might be the least relevant, and you might want to just throw those out of your chat because they're not really that relevant. And so it's just a way to basically reduce hallucinations and make sure you're getting the best answer out of your documents, because sometimes you can send in a document that is irrelevant to a RAG, and that will mess up your answer even though you had the right answer in another chunk.
Okay.
So it's kind of just, you have to play with it. It's a thing you just play with and you'll see.
Yes, yeah. I see Kavya just answered the question, which is, the question was, my chatbot is really slow. What advice could you give me to make it fast? Kavya, can you share that on the office hours again, like live, what you
Yeah, sure. There might be various reasons. Probably the deployment where you have done, probably if you have deployed it on Streamlit to get the response based on the application's front end setup, you might be getting the response little later. Even though your model is small and it's optimized for performance, but start from scratch. See whether if your model is depending on optimized for performance, using the amount of efficiently using the amount of memory that you have for model deployment and inference. So once you ensure that, then probably the other reason could be your deployment, where you have deployed your model for the front end using. So you might have to check the application framework as well, front end framework.
Correct. Yeah. A few more things to add there. I think if they are using a NIM APIs, then try using the smaller model, like as you said. And if they have access to a local GPU, they can just try the downloadable NIMs where they can download the Docker container and it already has the optimized models in, so they don't have to do anything. So I think
every once in a while, check.
They're using Streamlit.
If you're using build.nvidia.com, every once in a while, check a different model or a different time, because sometimes like some of that website only has a fixed number of GPUs running. We don't have it, so it just expands like as people use it. So sometimes the capacity is just full of like people, you guys and everybody else running.
Makes sense. And I think one more thing is, if you are using Streamlit or Gradio, and if there's a streaming response that is available, you should use it, because then it generates the text in real time and not waits for the whole query to be generated or the response to be generated before displaying that onto the GUI.
Yeah, if everything is working correctly and it's still taking a really long time, you're just probably doing like too much, sending in too many documents, retrieving too many documents, doing something in the middle that's taking too long. Or there could just be like one of the pieces is slow, so I would test all the pieces individually and see which of the things you're doing takes a long time.
Correct. Okay, makes sense. There was one more question that was posted earlier. Are we allowed to develop multilingual application for this contest, or is it restricted for English only? And I think, you can develop multilingual application, but be sure to communicate about what's the application about, and how does it help, or why is it a novel real world application? So yeah, you can submit multilingual.
Can I use NVIDIA GPU platform online for this? Yes, but there's no free GPU platform other than build.nvidia.com for inference. So I don't exactly know what you mean. So build.nvidia.com does have a lot of GPUs that are behind the scenes that you're calling, and that's free. We provide, but we don't have any we don't have any like service that we really provide, like for you to just use GPUs.
There's one question: are there any minimum requirements for the app GUI? If I could code in Google Colab with different languages apart from Python, in case not, should I run my scripts separately in different editors? Kavya?
You should be able to run different languages. I don't know about in Colab. I know if you pay for Colab Pro, you get VM access. You get like tunnel access, so you can actually do VM commands and do things like that. I know. I don't know. I know you can do like you can create tunnels and run on Streamlit and create like a tunnel. I've seen hacks where you can basically create like a tunnel where you can have the Streamlit running. So I've seen a lot of things done on Streamlit that people have done. I mean, on Colab, sorry. But I'd say it's free. Free. It's the GUI is free for you to design. We don't really have any requirements on that.
Yeah. So there's one question. Yeah, go ahead, Kavya.
Yeah, from Mia, it's a question on RAG. Is that what you're referring?
Yes. Yeah, the question is, could you suggest some example that can take in document, upload of CSV file, or website crawling?
I would say like there's on LlamaIndex, there's tons of examples. I don't know if we have a website crawling example. Website crawling is a little bit difficult these days because of all the websites basically have put blockers on their websites, so you can't crawl a lot of websites anymore. You can kind of use like something like Selenium and kind of like make your browser mimic an agent and do that kind of thing. But but I would say like we have this generative AI. We also have generative AI examples Git repo in our NVIDIA. We can post that. So in our GitHub, there's a lot of different examples for RAG, like hundred or not hundreds, but like probably 20 or 30.
Okay. Yeah, as Alex mentioned, I think there are tons of examples on LlamaIndex GitHub repository. So maybe you can just use any one of them. Yeah, and I think there should be also examples on how to parse CSV files. So yeah. Okay, I see Alex shared a generative AI example repository in the chat, which is really great. Like there are good examples there.
And then there's a web page reader in LlamaIndex. If you I just looked, there's a web page reader in LlamaIndex, so maybe you can use that for the web crawling.
Yeah. So there's one more question. When sharing the project on social media, shall we just explain how the app works or just show it working, or both? I think the recommendation here would be just explaining what was the motivation for this project, and then what's the pipeline like, and then maybe show how it works. So I think those three things would be helpful for a reviewer or judge to understand what your project is about. So if you can cover all of these three.
If you're just doing a demo for just social media, as detailed as possible, obviously, like it's going to be the best, but you don't want to release secrets. And then, but for your social media one. But then if you're when you submit it, it would be nice to kind of like if you have some kind of like write up or even another video that explains some of the inner workings, just so the judge can quickly kind of like understand what you kind of did.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. So I just pasted an email ID in the chat. So if you have any queries related to credits or NIM credits, feel free to email to the developer community at nvidia.com. So you'll get your questions answered there.
Custom models with NIM, that feature is not really available yet. There is like, like we do support LoRa, so NIM does support LoRa fine tuning. So if you have LoRa fine tunes that you've made and you used a downloadable NIM, there is a way you can serve those LoRa models. But then like full fine tuned models is not available yet. And then there's kind of like there's some ways you could do some like hacky things, but I wouldn't recommend it because the directions are not there.
Yeah, it would be hard to debug if you run into some issues.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So there's, I think, just a couple of more questions that we take. It's almost we are at the end of the Q&A session. So feel free to send any burning queries before we close out the session.
There was one question, I'm not sure if that was addressed, regarding the Docker setup on Mac.
Oh, yeah. So I think the question was, can you describe the resources and best practices for using tools like Docker and containers to optimize the workflow for Mac users, as Mac computers typically do not have NVIDIA GPUs?
Yeah, you're not going to use like the NIM, unfortunately, won't work with a Mac GPU. Like the NIM is just made for NVIDIA GPUs, basically. Like, so if you're using a Mac, you would just have to call the build.nvidia.com or get some cloud compute, like, you can reserve something in Azure or AWS if you really wanted to use if you really wanted to be on a compute, or you can use like Google Colab or something like that as your compute environment. But if I were you, I would just call the build.nvidia.com and not worry about deployments or anything like that.
Okay, cool. Let's take the last question for this session. Could you please recommend any other tool except Streamlit and Gradio, because these are slow? Also, the workflow for making this chatbot fast.
Another one's like Nice. I've heard of Nice GUI, Plotly Dash. Obviously, like there's Streamlit, Gradio. I don't know if those. I don't know if those have. I mean, in my opinion, those don't have like those aren't the latency pieces in the chatbot though. The chatbot latency is all going to be the LLM AI related things. If your Streamlit is that slow, then you did something wrong, basically, I think. So there's tons of frameworks. Just type in, like Python, like web GUI frameworks, and there will be a lot.
Okay. Kavya, any closing thoughts on that question?
Yes, in my opinion, also, I feel Streamlit and Gradio are easier for deployment. You don't need to worry about the front end framework. So, probably you might be doing something wrong with your model. So, that way, in order to debug, run a small application on the thing. So, you might, if you're getting the results faster, then try to debug on the model side and your data and the context that you're providing into the model. So try to fine tune that, then probably you will work on the inference speed.
Okay, cool. All right. Alex and Kavya for joining this office hours session and helping our developers with their problems. So really grateful for you guys. And to all of our participants, thank you all for joining. Remember to check out our technical resources on the contest website. They are categorized with different skill levels and cover a wide range of topics. Also, if you're facing any issue with the NIM credits, feel free to reach out to us on developercommunity@nvidia.com. So our next office hours session will be on October 24th, and we'll have a great demo from an NVIDIA expert. So stay tuned on that. And thank you all for participating today. Keep working on your projects and don't hesitate to reach out to us through our support channels if you have any more questions. Thank you, everyone, and good luck with your development. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.